All right, so we are moving on to 3.2 right now. In our student companion, we are on page 49. We're going to do our lunch. Draw a line from each measurement to figure out how it could represent, explain, draw a line from each measurement to the figure it could represent. Explain how you know you're correct. Okay, so we know area equals one side squared. And we know that volume equals one side cubed. So right off the bat, we might be able to see that our answer that's squared might be this answer here. Our answer that's cubed might go with this answer here. Well, now let's look at our figures. Over here we have a picture of a square, and over here we have a picture of a cube. Cube is just a six-sided prism, but this is just, one-sided 2D. This is 3D. So which one might go with which? Well, it's probably what you're expecting. The squared answer, 64 inches squared, goes with the area. The cubed answer, 64 inches cubed, goes with the volume or the cube. So notice all of our answers, if they're squared or for their area, their answers will be squared. If they're volume, their answers will be cubed. All right, let's move on to our key concept because they give you such a big area. Again, it's just like going to be with like they were with squares. We're going to define not perfect squares this time, but perfect cubes. So a perfect cube is a number that is a cube of, not cubes, cube of an integer. And what I mean by that, cube, is the number 3. So we see things like x cubed or y cubed, and that just means x cubed means 3 times 3 times 3. A number times itself 3 times. Okay. A cube root is a number that when multiplied by itself 3 times equals the number. So I think we talked about it yesterday. It's a split number when multiplied by itself, this time 3 times, it equals the original number. Okay. Could one of the measurements somehow represent something about both figures? Could the other? Well, if we look back up here, we could see that the area of this, one of the faces of this cube, could be the area of this here. So we could say the areas might be similar because the face of this cube here is a square, and that is a square. All right, let's turn the page to page 50. We have our got it. It says solve y cubed equals 60 or negative 64. So just like yesterday, I'm going to rewrite this. And now instead of taking the square root of both sides, I'm going to take the cube root of both sides. What does the cube root look like? It looks like a square root sign with a little tiny 3 right here. So cube root of y cubed is just y. So what would be the cube root of negative 64? Well, notice how it is a negative sign right here. So we know our answer is going to be negative. So what times itself 3 times gives us both a negative number and not only a negative number, but negative 64. The best way to do this sometimes is just to guess and check. We know that 8 squared is 64, so it's probably a multiple of 8. Why don't we try 4? Not only are we going to try 4, we're going to try negative 4. So negative 4 times negative 4 gives us a positive 16. If we times 16 by negative 4, we in fact get negative 64. So we know our answer is y equals negative 4. So why don't you try these, copy them down. A is x cubed equals 8, b x cubed equals negative 27, c x cubed equals 64, and d x cubed equals negative 125. Remember, for d and b, your answers will be negative. So try and find that number that multiplied by itself 3 times equals the number, the original number. Okay, you should have gotten these answers. For A, you should have gotten x equals 2, because 2 times 2 times 2 equals 8. For B, you should have gotten x equals negative 3, because negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3 is equal to negative 27. For C, you should have gotten x equals 4, because 4 times 4 times 4 equals 64. And D, you should have gotten x equals negative 5, because negative 5 times negative 5 times negative 5 is 125. So you might have done a little bit more work than that, but those are the correct answers. If you got them wrong, please fix them. All right, next, got it. It says solve y cubed equals 1 over 1,000. Well, again, I'm going to rewrite it just because I need more room. 1 over 1,000. So same thing as yesterday, I'm going to take the cube root of one side, the cube root of the other side. When I take the cube root of the side with the fraction, I take the cube root of both the top and the bottom. So make sure you do that. Remember, the cube root of y cubed is just y. Cube root of 1 is, you guessed it, 1. And the cube root of 1,000, well, what times itself 3 times is going to give me 1,000? Well, let's try 10. We know 10 times 10 is 100. Well, what's 100 times 10? That, in fact, does give us 1,000. So our final answer will be y equals 1 over 10. Notice how these really big numbers, like 1,000, and in the last one it was 125, have really small answers. When you're timesing something by itself, the numbers get big fast, so just keep that in mind. All right, right next to that, why don't you go ahead and try this one, and I'll show you where I want it. Let's just put it right up here, right next to it. You try w cubed equals 8 over 343. Show your work. Take the cube root of the top and the bottom. Pause here, see if you're right. Okay, so cube root. You should have gotten w equals 2 over 7. You might be wondering, how did she get 7? I just guessed and checked. I knew it was going to be less than 10 because I knew 10 cubed from this example was 1,000. I tried 9, I tried 8. They both didn't work, so I tried 7. Well, 7 times 7 is 49. 49 times 7 happens to be 343, so I knew 7 was the cube root of 343. All right, and now for our last one, our close and check. How is solving an equation that includes cubes similar to solving an equation that includes squares? And also, how is it different? So basically, for squares, and you might already know this answer, you're solving for an area. Solving for area. For cubes, you're solving for volume. And if you want to remember, volume equals side cubed, area equals side squared. In both of them, so how are they the same? Both of them, you're multiplying the same numbers by the same number, I should say, by itself. So for squares, you're solving for area. For cubes, you're solving for volume. And in both of them, so this is what's similar, in both of them, you're multiplying numbers by themselves, or multiplying the same number by itself. All right, go ahead and start your 6.2, or excuse me, your 3.2 homework on digits. It is numbers 1 through 14 today, so get that started.